Now, Lepore, looking at some of the other teams in the Canadian division so far, specifically the teams that the Leafs have played,
Yeah.
give me your thoughts on the Montreal Canadiens, because coming into the season, I wasn't totally convinced with some of the offseason moves they've made. And if you speak to Habs fans, it's as if they picked up, Crosby and Malkin in the offseason, and this team is ready to go win a Stanley Cup. But what are some of your thoughts on the way that the Habs have looked so far?
I say this as a full-on compliment to the Montreal Canadiens. That team is fucking annoying. Watching that game against Toronto, they just wouldn't go away. And every time a Toronto player had the puck, they were all over them. Of course, they got Carey Price. We can talk all day about how good Carey Price is, but that team is a well-balanced team. And I'm with you. Like, I think people were using a lot of recency bias, looking at what they did in the bubble and forgetting that team, were they 24th last year in the regular season?
They got so lucky to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they were one of the last teams to get in, but I was pointing to that. But I mean, obviously Anderson, I mean, that deal, we can talk a lot about the term of it, but he's looked good so far. Suzuki is sick. Like, Suzuki's an awesome player. And they have a lot of guys who are just good enough to get in the way and produce. And again, almost very different than the Leafs then in the sense that they are well balanced and they can beat you in a lot of different ways, where how Toronto's going to beat you. Toronto's going to beat you with the big boys scoring. But I will say it, man, from a playoff perspective, I'm scared shitless of the Montreal Canadiens. Like a 7-game series with the Leafs right now, like, I'd put that as a coin flip. Of course, the Leafs have more talent and more big names, but the balance in that lineup, the way they play, I think Julian's a good coach, and bet against Carey Price, be my guest. So I got to say, so far, so good for the Montreal Canadiens. They hammered Edmonton last night too. So I don't know. Montreal's here, man. They're here, and they need everyone in the Canadian division should be made aware of the Habs. That's my opinion anyway. What do you think?
Yeah, in terms of the Habs, I do like the way they played, especially in game one against the Leafs. Looking at how the Leafs played against the Senators, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, that I thought the Leafs controlled most of the play. And it sort of reminded me of the Leafs in the bubble against the Blue Jackets, where I thought throughout that series, even though the Leafs lost, they controlled most of the play, but the Blue Jackets obviously won the series. Whereas that Habs game, they traded a lot of chances with Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And despite not having the same talent level, there were moments in that game, it was back and forth. Both teams were getting quality scoring chances.
Yeah, Montreal plays fast.
They play really fast. They play hard. And it's like you said, Julian's a great coach. And they got Carey Price, who I will take over Frederik Andersen and Jack Campbell any day of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's terrifying, especially in a 7-game playoff series. And I like their defense core as well. Shea Weber, Jeff Petrie, the kid Alexander Romanov. They got a pretty nice defense core. They picked up Joel Edmondson. I mean, he's nothing special, but that's a team that has solid depth, and they're well coached. They got great goaltending. So they're going to be a problem throughout the season. Now, where I did see there was a glaring difference between the two teams, and you could disagree if you want, was in overtime, where I think in overtime, the Leafs skill level it just jumps off the screen, because no matter who they're putting out on the ice, whether it's the pair of Tavares and Nylander, Matthews and Marner, I mean, Riley's out there essentially like a forward. And that's exactly where I think Montreal sort of gets exposed for their lack of high-end talent and game breakers. And it's like you said, Nick Suzuki, I think, is really good. And at some point, could become, I mean, you could argue right now he's their best player, but he could elevate into that tier where he's talked about as one of the top centers, in the conference, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that team is there yet, but I really like the way they play, and I like their depth. And it's like you said, Lepore, that's a team I think everyone in the Canadian division should be scared of, especially if you have to play them in a 7-game playoff series.
Yeah. Like, and you mentioned the point though, about the overtime and them. I guess they don't really have like who'd be their best skating puck moving defenseman? Would it be Petrie? Like a guy who can join the rush, maybe pop in a goal, like distribute to the
it's
forwards.
essentially Petrie, and they're really high on Romanov as well, who looks like he's pretty smooth. But yeah, I mean, defensive, and because like Shea Weber's not that guy. Like, sure, he's great on the power play with a booming shot, but in terms of 3-on-3 overtime, he's not that dude. But no, I mean, it's like you said, the Habs, they're gonna be something to deal with all season long. They're annoying. They play hard. They're a pain in the ass. So we know what that team's about.